Let me also bring in our guest, Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, former diplomat to Oman, Asif Rameez Daudi, foreign policy expert. We have Kamar Chima and Faraz Saeed, both political analysts with us. Ambassador Wadhwa, now, even as the Crown Prince is in India, minutes after he's been sharing a stage with the Prime Minister of India, talking about the corridor, we had the caretaker Prime Minister of Pakistan saying that they expect $25 billion Saudi investment in their country over the next few months. How do we read this relationship? A corridor with us and $25 billion with Pakistan.
I'm sorry, now I can hear you. What did you say?
Can you hear me, Ambassador Wadhwa?
I can't hear anything.
All right, we will just try and fix that line with him. If you can hear me, Asif Rameez Daudi, how would you read the relationship right now of Saudi Arabia with India vis-a-vis Pakistan, where on the one hand there is an unprecedented engagement between the two countries, and yet they continue to, or at least Pakistan says they will continue to invest billions of dollars in Pakistan over the next few months?
Well, Padmaja, what I have to say here, what is happening today, what has happened today, that is historic. Every day, every moment, right from the beginning of G20 2023,
I'm unable to hear anything.
Until today, we are, having one or the other history created by our Indian government. Today, what has happened, if you talk about IMEC, I can say, that is India, Middle East Economic Corridor. That is a clear-cut indication that what kind of relation India has with these countries and how smartly Indian presidency has successfully achieved most of its targets. Because this itself is a big, very big achievement. And this speaks volumes about the relations. Now, let me get back to your question. As you said, we share stronger and it's an excellent kind of relation that India bears with Saudi Arabia and with the other countries in this region, be it United Arab Emirates and other countries. And we have seen this, and we have been noticing that the very presence of these visionary leaders there, and the way they are interacting with each other, the way they are having kinds of bilaterals and different kinds of decisions being taken is something which is like everyone across the globe, everyone having kind of an eye on this. And today we have proved, India has proved that what exact diplomacy means and how successfully we have achieved each of our targets. And even if you look at the goals, strong, sustainable, balanced, inclusive growth, this is one of the examples of inclusive. When you talk about sustainable future, this is another example of sustainable future, especially when you talk about multilateral institutions, in 21st century, this is another example of that. And how we reinvigorate multilateralism. And I just connect this with one of the visions that we have been seeing here, that is Vision 2030 of Saudi Arabia, which reflects that how they are moving towards a diversified economy and how they are thinking about the vibrant society. And these kinds of initiatives are going to have bigger global impact. This is going to benefit India and other countries as well, because it has...
Mr. Daudi, let's get a quick reaction from Ambassador Wadhwa and Kamar Chima as well. BRI on the one side, and we have the rail and shipping connectivity network, Kamar Chima, with Saudi Arabia and Europe and America on the other side.
Well, that it would be very interesting to know that how India and Middle East builds a rail connection between Middle East and Europe. But I think the most important thing is that this is a good initiative.
Okay, we really seem to be jinxed right now. Everything went right through the day. So the law of averages obviously had to hit us as 6 p.m. As always, as any of my viewers of 6 p.m. would know. Some things don't change whether it is a weekday or a Saturday. So we'll just fix that audio. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, you're with me in the studio. So I am hoping that your audio certainly cannot go wrong. BRI on the one side and this UAE-India corridor on the other. Who wins?
Any day this corridor is going to win. And I'll tell you why. These three areas, the Middle East, India and Europe, they have a kind of a reputation for slow infrastructure projects. Do you know why? It's not a bad reputation to have, because they actually sit down and look at opportunity costs. They look at the cost-benefit analysis. Everything has to go through public accounts and finances and things like that. There is a very robust public audit process that happens of everything. You just can't spend money any way you damn well like, especially on the kind of white elephants that China likes to spend money on. This is going to be thoroughly audited. This has been announced, but it still has to go through all the national audits and everything before it gets actioned. So it's a natural process of seeing to it that it has to be financially viable. As opposed to all of BRI, tell me one project in BRI so far that anybody knows of that is actually financially viable. Be it Hambantota, be it Gawadar, be it the base in Djibouti, anywhere, you tell me. So it's fantastic.
No, and isn't that the project where every second day you hear reports of how the Chinese are beating up Pakistani laborers or Pakistani laborers are beating up the Chinese engineers?
Yeah, and this is the thing about Chinese-led development. It leads to zero development. It's basically an external construction project for Chinese companies to go find some work.
But basically you're the vassals.
Basically you're the vassals, right? There's zero local skills development or anything like that. India doesn't do that. The West has also stopped doing all of that, right? So it's all local sustainable development and things like that. Even assume that the outlay for this project is 1/3 or 1/4 of what China is willing to put into BRI, I still think it will be money much more wisely spent with a guaranteed return on investment, unlike most of China's investments.
Do you think, Faraz Saeed, that you chose the wrong side?
I mean, we were all part of non-alignment movement. If India is choosing a side, it would be going against its own principles. However, when the esteemed guest was talking about the alternative to BRI, a connectivity, I also feel that it is going to put up a great competition to the BRI, because again, wherever BRI is going, it's solely the Chinese investment. However, whatever the route that is going to be taken up by the partners in during the G20 summit. I mean, we're not sure about what kind of agreements that are going to be signed. That is going to be financially inclusive, because again, all of the partners are going to pitch in, not just their land, but also the financial resources. So I think BRI is going to be contested by whatever the agreements that are going to sign. However, I want to mention how G20 summit is shadowed by the absence of China's President Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin's absence, because again, India has, embraced its multi-alignment mantra. It has named with Western groupings like Quad, G7, but also has remained a pivotal player in non-Western blocs like BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
Shadowed how exactly? What did we miss out on by the absence of Xi Jinping?
And Putin, not to forget that, because again, the same leaders were present in South Africa a few months ago during the BRICS summit, but the same leaders decided not to join G20 summit. Of course, there are strategic reasons, because again, India was not diplomatic enough.
But irrespective, India has said it's their loss, not ours. We managed to get our outcomes irrespective.
Can I just make a quick point?
Very quick point that Abhijit wants to make.
You see, there is an India-Russia economic corridor as well happening, just in case you didn't know that. You know, it's about 7,000 kilometers long, and it's meant to go all the way from India through and it's ship-based. It's not going to go through Pakistan. It's going to go from Mumbai to what's the Iranian port? I forget. Through the Straits of Hormuz, I forget the exact ports in Iran, and direct up north into Russia. So, you know, we've got the best of both worlds coming. We've got the best of India, Middle East, Europe corridor, and we're going through Russia, and neither seems to object to the other. So whether Putin was here or not doesn't make a difference.
Asif Daudi also wants to come in, but I want to get Ambassador Wadhwa in. Apologies, sir. Earlier your audio didn't seem to be fixed. Could you explain to our viewers, because right now it's all on paper. We're all sitting here talking about the corridor. But what does it mean in real terms, and what does India in particular stand to gain from it?
Well, it's all about economics, and obviously this connectivity project will take time to take off. There is no doubt about it. I don't think we should be looking at it from the prism of as a competitor to BRI at this stage. Whether it is or not, it's immaterial here. I think what's of consequence is the fact that India gets connected to the Middle East, and it also gets connected to Europe. And the European countries are also interested in this project. United States, of course, is interested in it from geopolitical angle, but India looks at it more from the economic angle. And by the way, the North-South corridor that Abhijit was talking about a little earlier, Chabahar becomes important, and it goes on to Astrakhan, etc. That's part of the story. And there is an overall connectivity desire here by countries of the region. And of course, the economic aspects of this are quite clear, because the countries like UAE and Saudi Arabia, who are part of this project, would also like this connectivity to happen because of increased trade and investments between India and these countries over the last few years. So let's look at it from that perspective rather than mix it up as a competitor to BRI or to anything else. And I completely agree with those who said that, yes, it's going to take some time. It's not like the BRI. It's not a one country project, so it's not going to be funded by just one country. There are others who are involved in this, and it will be quite transparent. And of course, the governments will have to make sure that there is viability in whatever they do.
And, you know, this is just one of the many things that India and the UAE have collaborated on, but the larger relationship as it exists today and the way it has grown is also what is going to be a big focus point. I have to take a very quick break at this point, but that's what we'll return to talk about in a minute. Welcome back. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, you see him being greeted there today morning by the Prime Minister, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He is on a 3-day state visit to India. Today you saw him on stage when the corridor between India, Saudi Arabia, European Union and America was announced. But all eyes now will be on the crucial bilateral meeting between him and Prime Minister Modi. Why are these bilaterals important, and why is India's relationship in particular, Ambassador Wadhwa, so important? Ambassador Wadhwa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I think we lost contact in between. Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yes, my question to you was, why is the relationship with Saudi Arabia and India so important at the current juncture?
I think it's a new era relationship, and we've seen an outreach by the Indian leadership to Saudi Arabia, as well as to UAE in particular, and of course to the Gulf in general over the past few years. And that's got to do a lot with we come back to the question of investments and economic security and also food security as far as the Gulf is concerned. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And Saudi Arabia is also looking at India as an investment destination in particular. There is much business here as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned. There are a number of partners. Indian private companies have teamed up with big Saudi Arabian companies. There's a lot of construction companies who are working today in Saudi Arabia from India, especially Larsen and Toubro, for instance, involved in huge projects in Saudi Arabia, in Neom City. Many of the stadia which were built in the Gulf in the recent past have been built by Indian companies. So there is a lot of business interests as far as Indian companies are concerned and vice versa. And of course, the Saudi Arabia, the investment funds would be looking at India as a viable destination for substantial returns as well.
Ambassador Wadhwa, you have been our ambassador to Oman in 2007, but at that time, India had a very different relationship with the Middle East. Periodically, we used to see a lot of rumblings, especially when it came, to India's question vis-a-vis Pakistan on the issue of Kashmir. Why has it changed now to a point where we are having joint projects?
Well, quite simply, it boils down to economics, and I would not try and bring in extraneous issues into this. When you don't have a common interest like economics and investments and trade, you always look for other issues which can arise and which become more important.
100% economics and growing cooperation, and talking specifically about that also. Joining us is Minister Hardeep Puri. Over to you, Navika.